welcome back. You're watching Today. Matching outfits, hand-holding while gazing into each other's eyes. Thabo and Nandipha Magudumana were reunited in the dock this week. Now they and 10 others face charges ranging from fraud, corruption and aiding and abetting a convict to violation of a corpse and arson. 9 are currently out on bail, and the latest court appearance had South Africans and social media abuzz. To unpack what we saw in court and the latest developments, we're joined this afternoon in studio by body language expert Tania Steyn, legal expert from the UJ Law Clinic, Elton Hart, and senior reporter Silindelo Masikane, who's followed the story from the very beginning. But before we continue, let's just take you back to what transpired in court before we get into that discussion.
You can see now in front of you Thabo walking inside the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court for the first time. It was a brief appearance for 12 suspects accused of assisting Thabo escape from prison. But for Bester and Dr. Nandipha Magudumana, it was more of a reunion. The pair arrived in matching outfits, held hands, and could be seen catching up in an intimate conversation. This is the first time they're seeing each other since their deportation from Tanzania. Bester also acknowledged the co-accused in the dock. During court proceedings, Bester and Magudumana's lawyers flagged some issues with the magistrate.
The instructions which I received from the fifth accused, just to place on record. Firstly, that he's been inhumanely treated at the Posimampuru Correctional Center. That he spends almost 23 hours being counted and in his cell.
How long?
23 hours per day, being cuffed and in his cell.
Handcuffed?
Handcuffed.
Every day?
On a daily basis.
The manner in which she was transported from Kronstadt prison to this court had all the ingredients of indignity, and it was very inhumane. She was handcuffed, Your Worship, and as she was being transported, she actually questioned the manner in which she was to be transported, as in other instances when she was transported to this court, she was not transported in the manner that she was today. Her protest fell on deaf ears.
Bester is also demanding to have items and cash worth millions returned to him.
Marriage ring, 350,000 rands, and these are watches, Your Worship, and APX2, 2.5 million. There were 2 of those, Your Worship. And FM, 2.5 million, 2 of those as well. A Rolex O, 2.6 million rands, 2 of those. Just written as C, valued at 1,750 rands. A PP, valued at 1.9 million rands. Cash which is missing, 295,000 rands, South African rands, Worship. 36,000 US dollars. 7,200,000 Tanzanian, I don't know if they are dollars or what, Worship. And there's Zambian money, 1.4 million. European pounds, 500,000. Swiss francs, 150,000, Worship. Worship, all these items that I'm mentioning, they were reported stolen by accused number 5 at the Lanseria police station.
The accused will be back in court on the 11th of October. Silindelo Masikane, Bloemfontein in the Free State.
Let's get into that discussion now. Slee, now you've been on the story since its very inception, right? Yeah. And a lot of interesting developments along the way. But just to give our viewers some context, who are those in the dock, the 12 people in the dock, and what exactly did they do when it came to the Great Escape?
Well, in essence, we've got 12 people in the dock, like you've said. We've got Dr. Nandipha's father as one of the accused. We've got a Zimbabwean national, Zanda Moyo. And, of course, in the majority, we have former G4S as well as suspended G4S employees who we understand have been linked in some way to the escape. And in particular, it does seem as though all of these who were in the employ of G4S or were on shift at the time were present at the Mangaung Correctional Center. And during the bail applications for the accused, and like you said, we've got majority who are already out on bail. 9 out of the 12 accused are out on bail. And during the bail verdicts, we've heard from the investigating officer who has already given us some context in terms of how each and every person has been linked to the escape. We have control room operators, we've got security guards, we've got a supervisor, accused number 1, Sunuhe Matswara, who's one of those who's been actually labeled as one of the masterminds of the escape, who we understand has been linked with payments, who also understand may have actually brought into the fold all of those who we see as the accused, all the role players of the escape. And everybody who has been linked played some kind of a crucial role in ensuring that Bester escaped from prison that night. Besides Sunuhe Matswara, we also have a CCTV technician who we understand switched off the cameras on the night of the escape. And from what we also have heard from the investigating officer, he's one of those who actually walked Bester out of prison in a G4S uniform, dressed as an official. So the others are security guards, like I said, control room operators, people who opened the gates, people who drove in the body that was going to be the decoy, and that is who we so far have in the dock. But of course, we've heard from the police who say that more arrests have not been ruled out at this stage. I
want to bring in Tania in a moment, but before I do, you were at court on Tuesday when there was that reunion between Thabo and Nandipha. A sense of the feeling or the electricity, if any, between them, as someone who was actually there.
You know what was interesting was to see how differently the courtroom was being handled on that particular day, because you would remember since Bester's arrest, he's had only one appearance at the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court. All of the other appearances have been virtual, so he hasn't been inside court with any of the accused at any given point in time. And by the time that he was deported back and facing these legal charges, I think we had only 2 people who had been arrested that so far. That was accused number 1, Sunuhe Matswara, the supervisor, as well as Dr. Nandipha's father. So there was only 2 people at that stage when they were brought back from Tanzania that had been arrested, and that was on the 13th of April. So from the 13th of April until now in August, we're sitting at 12 people in the dock. And what I think was interesting for me was to see the entire interaction, not just Dr. Nandipha and Thabo Bester, but the way he was relating to the co-accused as well, because I wanted to see if, you know, are they upset? Are they going to pretend like they don't know each other? You know, what's going to be that interaction? And you could really see that there was some kind of excitement to have Thabo Bester in the room, despite the heightened security. But those in the gallery, us as journalists, were really, really interested in seeing that interaction between the co-accused. And you could definitely tell that they know each other, that, you know, there is some kind of relationship, friendship, whatever you want to call it, but definitely the electricity between Dr. Nandipha and Thabo Bester was quite evident, for me at least, but I'm not an expert.
Yeah, I mean, South Africans, Tania, saw a love story playing out, a reunion between 2 lovebirds, if you will, but you saw it quite differently. Just tell us exactly what it is that you witnessed between the 2 interacting, and I suppose the way that Thabo Bester was received by everyone else in the dock.
Thank you. So, from the beginning, before he arrived, as Dr. Nandi was sitting there, she was fiddling a lot with her hands. So in body language, we look at what are we doing constantly. So she's constantly fiddling with her hands. In body language, that's a self-soothing. That means she's quite anxious. It's an anxious day. She should be. Then they have, somebody asked them, where is accused number 5 going to sit? And she starts fiddling with her earrings. She wants to put her earrings in, and she curls up on herself. She leans forward. And as they start talking about where he's going to sit, they literally put their hand behind her to say he's sitting next to her. She curls down even further. Now, when we curl down like that, it's extreme anxiety. So to me, that says she's really nervous seeing him. When they did interact and they met, there was a friendly face. She didn't smile all the way to her eyes. With body language, we look for fake smiles and real smiles. There wasn't a real smile on her face. It was fake. She's quite nervous. Her arm came around her stomach. Now, women do this to protect their bodies.
Yes.
Fear, vulnerable, they feel threatened. So there was a lot of that going on with her. Also, from different angles that I watched, she moved her body away from his. Now, we call that distancing behavior. She couldn't move a lot because there wasn't a lot of space. But she did. She used, the man next to her was being squeezed and squeezed. I literally saw her move away. So when we look at body language, we look a little bit deeper. I do think there's something up. She did a little bit of he asked her something we couldn't hear, and she said something like, I know, and then we call that a tongue jut. So now it all happens at a subconscious level. When we do this, it's almost like you're pushing out the words it's a distaste in your mouth. So whatever he said to her, she's not quite happy with what he said. So I do think, look, there was a time where he took a lint off her and she took something off his beard.
They also held hands.
But very quickly, and then you see him let go of her hand. He actually lets go. He moves his body forward from her. There's angles where I can see she wants his attention. She craves it, but I do think he's manipulated her into being very vulnerable around him. So I saw a lot of vulnerability there, and I do think, from what I read and from what I've seen, I do think there's going to be something coming.
Yeah. Let's get into the legalities of it, Mr. Hart. And I think there were a lot of interesting arguments that were brought in and also his belongings and the value of those belongings. What was the relevance of that legal argument that was put forward? But also, I suppose, the rest of the case that was stated for Thabo Bester at this appearance.
Now, indeed, if one looks at the valuables, when a person is arrested in South Africa, irrespective of sentence or not sentence, whatever they find in your possession, they need to sort of have declared and put on what they call a prisoner's property register. That is kept with the authorities. They give you a copy. So when one of your loved ones or trust ones come, you can hand over, give them power of attorney to collect the stuff and take it to safe custody. So what he's saying is saying, at Lanseria, I had these items in my possession, which at the time I lawfully possessed. It was taken from me as I was arrested and taken into custody, and I'm not allowed to have these items, but I did give it over to the relevant officers that was there. So I just want to know where's my item so that I can most probably tell one of my relatives or whoever I trust to collect it and keep it safe until whenever I get released or whatever instruction I give needs to happen to those items. So that is his constitutional right. Nobody can take that away. The only problem is, if the state, through the police or the NPA, can prove that all these items was acquired with ill-gotten gains, they can now use the Prevention of Organized Crime Act to actually seize these items, sell it off in the fight against crime and corruption in the country. So that is the thing. And if they can't, they can most probably also use Section 36 of the CPA, the Criminal Procedure Act, to say this is alleged stolen goods, if he can't prove as Thabo Bester where he got it. If they can show through Dr. Nandipha's operations that she bought the stuff legally, then maybe we have a problem, but it's a two-way cutting sword. So one needs to further investigate and see where it came from, the sources that actually acquired these things, and then from there you can make your next move. But POCA is on the table for the state to utilize it, to say, you were in custody, how did you generate income? So we can work around that lines, but it's not as clear-cut as I'm putting it. There's much more thinking and logistics behind the scenes that goes into that. type of argument or arrangement.
Slee, apart from all the matching outfits and all the aesthetics we saw in a court, Dr. Nandipha Magudumana still hasn't applied for bail, and her legal team has put forward an argument about how she was brought back into the country. And give us a sense of why that is, that she still sits in jail at this stage and hasn't applied for bail.
You know, I can imagine it's more of a strategy on her part, probably legal advice that she's been getting on her part as well. I mean, Dr. Nandipha was found in another country with multiple passports, had to be brought back, deported. So she may have received legal advice to say, look, let's try a different route. The chances or possibilities of you getting bail are probably slim to none at this stage. And we know the state would obviously oppose it. It opposed majority of the bail applications except for one or two. So what we are seeing is that Dr. Nandipha at this point has reserved her right, and her legal representative in the last court appearance actually stressing that fact to say Dr. Nandipha isn't abandoning her bail bid. She's just going to reserve that right for now as she explores different avenues. We've seen that she went to the High Court on an urgent basis saying that she was kidnapped, that she was abducted by state officials. She was brought back here against her will, but ultimately the High Court found that she agreed to come back. She consented to come back. Therefore, her application was dismissed. At this point, we do understand that there are consultations around actually just petitioning the Supreme Court of Appeal directly.
I want to bring you in here, Mr. Hart, before we go back to Tania, in that the advantages of that reservation of applying for bail, how does it play out for someone who is appearing in court?
If one looks at it, because currently she's appealing to Bloemfontein, to the eNCA, to say, listen, yeah, look at... and the problem that the state has in this regard for me is that Judge Loubser, in his ruling, he made a fact-finding to say that Nandipha was brought back under a disguised extradition. So that fact-finding was made. And normally your appeal court doesn't necessarily want to interfere with the judgment of the court of first instance if there's a fact-finding, because they don't have everything before them. They have the appeal record before them. And he made that finding. And he sort of, half for me, made a one-liner pertaining to consent, to say, okay, she consented, she said she wanted to be brought. But that was not canvassed properly before that court. So for me, that gate is still open. And that court might find that her extradition or disguised extradition to South Africa was unlawful. They must release her. Her victory might be short-lived, because wherever they find her in the country, because they're not going to allow her to cross any border now, where they find her, they can rearrest her and bring her to court. At that stage, then she will be able to actually apply for bail. And then one can now look at different avenues when she is rearrested. Is she really a flight risk? Because now she was in South Africa when they find her. So the facts would slightly change. And maybe it might work in her advantage. I don't completely understand the legal strategy, but that's more or less where I think they are aiming and shooting at.
Tania, we have to go to an ad break, but I have to ask you, you said that you saw someone who was very anxious before Thabo Bester arrived, and of course when he was there. You did not see two people who were in love, I would assume, and I wonder if you saw if Thabo had any emotional attachment to Dr. Nandipha Magudumana in the dock on that day.
So no, I didn't see him have any attachment to her whatsoever. To me, it looked like he was already done with her. She'd served her purpose. She helped him. And she's a little bit attached to him, but she's also I think she's going to turn on him. That's my feeling. That's what I pick up there. Something's going to happen there. And he was quite anxious, although he was laughing and looked like he was joking and having fun. This is someone
that's been described as a psychopath in many instances.
Yes, you could say that, but I don't think so, because I saw him bouncing. You see him sitting doing this.
Yes.
Now that is a self-soothing behavior. It's trying to calm yourself. It's signs of anxiety. So he's quite anxious. The fake smiles, I mean, he laughs and then the smile fades very quickly. With a real smile, it stays a little bit longer. It doesn't fade quickly. So it's not real. He's not really laughing. It's all pretend for him in front of the cameras. He knows the cameras are there. The fact that they were both dressed in white, I don't know who's coordinating that, because they wanted them to look like a couple. I mean, you can look on his shirt. You can still see the lines from the packet where as the shirt was folded up. You know, so someone's coordinating that to make them look like a couple in love. I don't think they're in love. When we're in love with someone, we make a lot of eye contact. we look at each other, we turn our bodies towards each other. She angled her body away. She did a lot of self-soothing, where she's touching her hair and her neck. So it's to calm yourself. He turned his body towards her, but slightly forward. So he's almost like he's ahead of her, in charge of her, and she's behind him. So, you know, it's interesting when I look at it and when other people look at it, I look way deeper. I do slow it down a little to see more. When you slow down the videos, you see a lot more. So there was a lot of, I don't think the relationship was good anymore.
Yeah, that's a pity, and we'll continue our conversation after the break. Let's head into a short ad break and we continue the discussion with the top story of the week and, of course, what is said to come in the coming weeks. Don't go anywhere.